My name is Diane Mitchell, and I'm 35 years old. What I'm about to tell you happened at my father's 70th birthday party in front of 50 guests when my parents demanded I pay my sister's $180,000 mortgage, then disowned me when I refused. They said I was no daughter of theirs, told me to never come back. But they didn't know about the document in my purse that would change everything, or that my lawyer friend was recording every word. Before I share how my entire family turned against me in a matter of minutes, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Drop a comment below. I read every single one. It's been 6 months since that night, and I'm finally ready to talk about it. Not for sympathy, but because I know there are others out there dealing with family financial manipulation, being called selfish for having boundaries, being the family ATM while watching others get endless support. So let me take you back to that Saturday evening in March, when everything I thought I knew about family loyalty was shattered and rebuilt into something stronger. The Marriott ballroom looked perfect that night, gold and burgundy decorations everywhere, happy 70th Robert banners stretching across the walls. My father had worked 40 years in banking, and this party was meant to be his victory lap. 50 guests filled 5 round tables, each one decorated with photos from Dad's career milestones. I arrived early to help with setup, as always, the responsible daughter. While arranging place cards, I noticed Sarah's family had the table closest to Dad's, while I was seated with distant cousins. Small detail, but it set the tone. "Diane, sweetie, you look tired," Aunt Martha said, air kissing my cheek. "Still no husband to help with life?" I smiled politely. "Just busy with tax season, Aunt Martha. Business is good." At 7:30, Sarah finally arrived with James and their 2 kids. She looked frazzled, whispering urgently with Mom near the gift table. Mom kept glancing at Dad, nodding at whatever Sarah was saying. James stood apart, staring at his phone, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The dinner proceeded normally at first. Dad's former colleagues shared stories. Uncle Tony made his usual terrible jokes. I was actually enjoying myself, catching up with cousins I hadn't seen in years. Rebecca Torres, my friend from college who'd become a successful attorney, sat at my table. She'd known my family dynamics for 15 years. "Your sister seems stressed," Rebecca observed quietly. "When isn't she?" I replied, watching Sarah down her 3rd glass of wine. At 8:45, the cake arrived. 3 tiers of chocolate perfection. We sang happy birthday, Dad blew out the candles, and everyone applauded. Then he stood up, raising his champagne glass. The room quieted, expecting a thank you speech. "Before I thank you all for coming," Dad began, his banking executive voice filling the room, "I need to address something important. A family matter that affects everyone here who cares about us." My stomach dropped. Mom moved to stand beside him, her hand on his shoulder. Sarah suddenly looked very interested in her napkin. "As many of you know," Dad continued, "family means everything to me. The responsibility we have to each other, especially in difficult times, defines who we are as people." Several guests nodded approvingly. Rebecca's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. She'd seen this before, the public manipulation, the forced accountability through social pressure. Then Dad raised his champagne glass, but his words weren't a toast. To understand what happened next, you need to know our history. I'd been the responsible one since age 16, working part-time while Sarah got her 3rd car after crashing the 2nd. I paid my way through college with scholarships and night shifts. Sarah dropped out twice, each time costing our parents $15,000 in lost tuition. When I graduated and started my accounting practice, Sarah was launching her first business, a boutique that lasted 6 months. Then came the food truck that never got permits. Then the online jewelry store that sold 12 items total. Each failure came with the same story. Just a little more money would fix everything. 5 years ago, Sarah came to me directly. "Diane, I need 50,000. James and I found the perfect investment opportunity. We'll pay you back in 2 years, with interest. I was young, successful, and still believed family meant something. So I drafted a proper loan agreement, had it notarized, set reasonable terms. Sarah signed it eagerly, promising this time would be different. That was March 2019. By March 2020, the excuses started. The pandemic. The kids needed things. James lost his job. Always something. Never any payments. Not even the interest. Meanwhile, I watched my parents pour money into Sarah's life. Dance lessons for her kids, while telling me I was too focused on career to understand family priorities. A new SUV for Sarah when her old one broke, while reminding me that successful people don't need help. Every holiday, Sarah would cry about her struggles, and Mom would shoot me meaningful looks about helping your only sister. But I kept that signed loan document, updated the interest calculations quarterly, kept every text where Sarah promised to pay next month, because somewhere deep down I knew this day would come. Sarah and James are about to lose their home, Dad announced to the silent room. They've fallen behind on mortgage payments, and the bank will foreclose next month unless they can pay the full arrears. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah started crying on cue, James still staring at his phone. The amount needed is $180,000, Dad continued. As a family, we cannot let Sarah's children become homeless, which is why Diane has agreed to handle this situation. My wine glass stopped halfway to my lips. I'm sorry, what? Don't be modest, sweetheart, Mom chimed in, her voice sweet as poison. You're the successful one, the one with no responsibilities except yourself. This is what family does. 50 pairs of eyes turned to me. I saw judgment in some, pity in others, expectation in most. I haven't agreed to anything, I said carefully. Dad's face darkened. Sarah is your sister. Her children are your nephews. You make more in a year than James has seen in 3. That's not— It's okay, Diane, Sarah interrupted, tears streaming. I know you've never understood what it's like to struggle, to have children depending on you, to watch everything fall apart despite trying your best. The room's sympathy shifted entirely to her. Poor Sarah, the struggling mother, mean Diane, the selfish career woman. We're not asking for a gift, Mom added. Just family helping family. You can afford it. Everyone turned to look at me. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Aunt Martha nodded approvingly at my parents' reasonable request. Uncle Tony muttered something about family values to his wife. Even Dad's former colleagues seemed to side with the narrative. Successful single woman should obviously rescue struggling family. She'll do it, Cousin Jennifer said loudly. Diane's always been good with money. What's the point of having it if not to help family? A wave of agreement rippled through the room. I caught fragments of whispered conversations. Must be nice to have that kind of money. Poor Sarah, 2 kids and all. About time Diane stepped up. Sarah's children, 8 and 10, looked confused and scared. The older one, Tyler, kept asking, Are we really going to lose our house, Mom? Sarah hugged them dramatically, shooting me a look that said, How can you do this to them? James finally looked up from his phone, but not at me. He stared at the exit door like he wanted to bolt. His jaw was clenched, hands shaking slightly. Strange reaction for someone about to be saved. Rebecca remained silent beside me, but I noticed her phone was now on the table, screen facing down. The tiny red recording light was visible only to me. She'd started documenting this without being asked. 15 years of friendship meant she knew exactly where this was heading. Well, Diane, Dad pressed, your family is waiting. The room held its breath for my answer. Let me be clear about what they were asking. $180,000 was 3 years of my income after taxes. 3 years of 60-hour weeks during tax season. 3 years of building my reputation one client at a time, staying up until 3 a.m. double-checking numbers, missing vacations because small business owners needed their books done. I'd been saving for 5 years to buy my own home. Not a mansion, just a two-bedroom condo where I could finally paint the walls whatever color I wanted, where I could have an office that wasn't my kitchen table, where no landlord could raise the rent or refuse to fix the heating. That dream sat in my savings account, $195,000, waiting for the right property, and they wanted all of it for Sarah. This wasn't the first time either. I'd mentally calculated it during sleepless nights. Over the past decade, between direct loans and gifts I'd never see again, Sarah had taken about $100,000 from various family members, $50,000 from me, $20,000 from our parents' retirement, $15,000 from Grandma's estate that was meant to be split equally, the rest from aunts, uncles, anyone with a checking account, and a guilt complex. That money, I said slowly, represents my entire future, my house deposit, my emergency fund, my security. Security? Mom laughed bitterly. Sarah's children might be sleeping in a car, and you're worried about security? Have you asked why they're in this situation? I responded. James hasn't worked in 2 years. Sarah's failed 3 businesses. They bought that house with no down payment and an adjustable rate mortgage they couldn't afford even when James was employed. How dare you judge them? Dad growled. Not everyone gets lucky like you. Lucky. That's what they called my 4.0 GPA earned while working nights. Lucky was my CPA certification after failing twice and studying until my eyes burned. Lucky was building a client base by offering discounted rates for 2 years until word of mouth grew. But I'd learned long ago that in my family, Sarah's failures were bad luck, while my successes were just good fortune. Sarah struggled. I was privileged. Sarah needed help. I was obligated to provide it. Rebecca's hand found mine again. She'd seen my bank statements when I'd asked her to review my condo purchase contract last month. She knew exactly what this request meant. You're really going to let your nephews suffer because you want a condo? Mom's voice carried across the room, each word designed for maximum impact. What kind of person values property over family? The kind who's already given $50,000 that was never repaid, I said quietly. The room stirred. Sarah's face went pale. That's different, she said quickly. That was a business investment that didn't work out. This is about my children having a roof over their heads. Children you chose to have, I replied. Children you chose to support on dreams and debt instead of stable income. Dad slammed his hand on the table. The champagne glasses jumped. Enough! You will help your sister, or you can forget being part of this family. Robert, Rebecca said softly, speaking for the first time, are you really giving your daughter an ultimatum at your birthday party? Stay out of this, Mom snapped. This is family business. Then maybe it shouldn't be discussed in front of 50 people, Rebecca countered. But Mom was already standing, moving toward me with the practiced disappointment of a mother who'd perfected emotional manipulation. Diane, sweetie, I know you don't have children, so you can't understand the fear of losing everything. But Sarah does. Every night she lies awake terrified. Every morning she wonders if today's the day the sheriff comes. Sarah sobbed harder. Several guests wiped their eyes. Even I felt the pull of it, the guilt, the obligation, the weight of being labeled the family villain. If you don't do this, Dad said, his voice now cold and formal, like he was terminating an employee, then you're no longer welcome in this family. We'll change our wills. You won't be invited to holidays. You'll be dead to us. Dead to us, Mom repeated. Is that what you want? To orphan yourself over money? My hands were shaking now, but not from fear, from rage, from exhaustion, from 15 years of being the family ATM while being told I was selfish for having boundaries. So let me understand, I said, standing slowly. If I don't give Sarah 3 years of my income, money I worked for, saved for, planned my future with, I'm no longer your daughter? That's exactly what we're saying, Dad confirmed. I stood up slowly, my hands surprisingly steady. If you've ever been in a situation where family expected you to sacrifice everything while they took no responsibility, type boundaries in the comments. I'm curious. What would you have done in my position? Would you have paid, or would you have stood your ground? Let me know below, and don't forget to hit that like button if this story resonates with you. Now, let me tell you what happened when I finally spoke up. I'm sorry, but I cannot and will not pay for Sarah's mortgage. The words came out clear and steady, though my heart was racing. Every face in the room turned to stone. Cannot, Dad repeated, or will not. Both. I cannot destroy my financial future for someone else's repeated poor decisions, and I will not enable this pattern any longer. Enable? Sarah shrieked. I'm about to be homeless. You're about to face consequences, I corrected. There's a difference. How can you be so cruel? Mom demanded. Is it cruel to expect adults to handle their own responsibilities? Is it cruel to keep the money I earned? Is it cruel to say no to being financially abused? The phrase financially abused rippled through the crowd like a stone in water. Some guests shifted uncomfortably, others leaned forward, sensing drama. James still hadn't said a word. He sat frozen, knuckles white as he gripped his phone. When I mentioned financial abuse, he flinched visibly. You're twisting this, Dad said. We're asking for help, not abusing anyone. You're demanding money in front of 50 people, threatening to disown me if I refuse. What would you call it? Rebecca's phone shifted slightly, ensuring it captured everything. Two of Dad's former colleagues exchanged glances and quietly stood to leave, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Sit down, Dad barked at them. We're not done here. But I was just getting started. You ungrateful bitch, Sarah snarled, the tears suddenly gone. Everything always came easy to you. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect little life with no responsibilities. Sarah! Mom gasped, but not at the insult, at the mask slipping. No, Mom, let me talk. She sits there in her nice apartment, buying designer clothes, taking vacations, while I struggle every single day. My kids deserve better than a selfish aunt who hoards money like a dragon. Designer clothes? I laughed bitterly. I shop at Target. That vacation? A weekend in Boston for a continuing education conference. But you wouldn't know that because you've never asked about my life unless you needed money. Because your life is boring, Sarah shouted. Numbers and spreadsheets and no one to love you except your bank balance. The room collectively gasped. Even Mom looked shocked. At least my bank balance doesn't lie to me, I shot back. It doesn't promise to pay me back and then buy a new car instead. How dare... The Toyota Highlander, I continued. 2021 model, $40,000. Bought 3 months after you borrowed $50,000 from me for an emergency. I have the Carfax report. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish. James had gone completely pale. That's enough, Dad roared. You're not just selfish, you're vindictive, keeping track of every penny like we're strangers instead of family. Strangers would have paid me back, I said. Mom started crying, the theatrical kind meant to guilt me into submission. I can't believe I raised such a heartless daughter. What did we do wrong? Rebecca was typing something on her phone now, her lawyer instincts clearly activated. Several more guests were edging toward the exit. Aunt Martha stood up, her voice dripping with judgment. Diane, dear, family helps family. When you're old and alone, you'll regret this selfishness. She's right, Uncle Tony added. What's money compared to blood? You can always make more money. Then why don't you pay? I asked him directly. He sputtered. Well, we don't have that kind of... Exactly. You don't have it. But somehow, I'm evil for not giving what I do have. Cousin Jennifer chimed in. But you don't have kids, Diane. You don't understand the pressure Sarah's under. I understand math, I replied. 2 adults, 0 jobs, 3 failed businesses, and a mortgage they couldn't afford from day one. That's not pressure, it's poor planning. You cold-hearted, someone started. Realistic, I interrupted. The word you're looking for is realistic. But the room had chosen sides. Team Sarah had about 40 members, all shaking their heads at my cruelty. Team Diane consisted of Rebecca and maybe 3 others who remained silent but didn't join the condemnation. One of those was James's brother Marcus, who'd flown in from Seattle. He kept staring at James with an expression I couldn't read. Disappointment? Anger? Knowledge? "This is your last chance," Dad said, his voice now deadly quiet. "Help your sister or leave this family forever." The ultimatum hung in the air like a blade. Mom clutched Dad's arm, Sarah held her children like shields, and 50 people waited to see if I'd break. Then Dad said the words that changed everything. "You're no daughter of ours," Dad declared, his banking executive voice carrying the same finality as when he'd fired employees. "Get out and never come back." The words hit like physical blows, but I'd been expecting them for years. What I hadn't expected was how free I'd feel hearing them. "We're writing you out of the will," Mom added, as if that was the ultimate threat. "Everything will go to Sarah, our real daughter who understands love and sacrifice." "The daughter who loves you enough to bankrupt you," I observed. Sarah stood up, pulling her children closer. "You don't have a sister anymore either. My children don't have an aunt. You're nothing to us." Tyler, the older boy, looked confused. "But Mom, Aunt Diane sent me that chemistry set for—" "Quiet," Sarah snapped, and Tyler fell silent. I reached for my purse, my fingers finding the envelope I'd brought just in case. The one Rebecca had told me to keep handy when I'd mentioned the party last week. My hand brushed against it, but I didn't pull it out yet. "Is that your final decision?" I asked my parents. "You're disowning me for refusing to pay Sarah's mortgage?" "Yes," they said in unison. "And everyone here is witnessing this?" Nods around the room. Some eager, some uncomfortable, all watching. Rebecca stood up slowly, deliberately. "Before Diane leaves, might I ask a question as the family's friend?" "We said family business," Mom started. "Oh, I think this involves everyone who's been asked to help over the years," Rebecca said smoothly. "Including me, when Sarah asked to borrow $20,000 last year for her jewelry business." Sarah went rigid. That was news to our parents. The room fell completely silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming, someone's phone vibrating on silent, ice settling in glasses. I took a deep breath, feeling oddly calm, like standing in the eye of a hurricane, knowing the worst was about to hit, but being ready for it. My fingers found the envelope again, its edges crisp against my palm. "Rebecca," I said quietly, "I think it's time." She nodded, her phone still recording. "Should we discuss the previous financial arrangements before Diane leaves this family forever?" "What previous arrangements?" Dad demanded. "The ones Sarah seems to have forgotten," Rebecca said. "The legal ones." Sarah's face drained of all color. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" I pulled the envelope from my purse, holding it up so everyone could see. "Then this must be someone else's signature." The envelope was plain, brown, unremarkable, but Sarah stared at it like it was a live grenade. James made a strangled sound, the first noise he'd made all evening. "What is that?" Mom asked, but her voice had lost its certainty. "Something that should have been addressed 5 years ago," Rebecca said, now in full lawyer mode. "Something that changes the entire context of tonight's demands." Marcus, James's brother, suddenly spoke up from the back. "Is that what I think it is?" All eyes turned to him. "You knew?" James whispered, speaking for the first time all night. "I told you to tell them," Marcus replied. "I told you this would come back." "Tell us what?" Dad's voice was sharp now, confused, the control slipping. Rebecca stood beside me, professional and calm. "Mr. Mitchell, before you disown your daughter for not paying a debt that isn't hers, perhaps you should know about the debt that is." But Dad wasn't listening. The suggestion that his golden child Sarah might owe money sent him into a rage that revealed exactly who he'd always been. "Look at her, everyone," he announced, pointing at me like I was an exhibit. "This is what greed looks like. This is what happens when someone values money over blood." "She's always been jealous of Sarah," Mom added, warming to the theme. "Sarah who gave us grandchildren. Sarah who includes us in her life. Sarah, who calls every day while Diane can't even remember our birthdays without her phone reminder. The lies stung because of the grain of truth. I did use phone reminders for everyone's birthday, anniversary, and important events. It's called being organized. Remember Christmas? Sarah piled on, tears streaming again. She showed up 2 hours late with store-bought cookies while I made everything from scratch. She didn't mention I was late because I'd driven her to the ER when Tyler broke his arm that morning, or that the cookies were from a bakery that charged $60 because everything else was closed on Christmas. Selfish, someone muttered. Cold, another agreed. No wonder she's alone, Aunt Martha stage whispered. Dad continued his performance. We gave you everything. Private tutors when you struggled with math. I never had tutors. That was Sarah. The car for your 16th birthday. I bought my own car at 18 with money from 3 jobs. And this is how you repay us? By keeping score? By refusing to help your sister when she needs you most? Some guests were recording now, phones held up to capture my humiliation. Tomorrow this would be on Facebook, twisted into whatever narrative made them feel righteous. She probably has millions hidden away, someone speculated. These accountant types always do. While her own family suffers, another added. But something interesting was happening. A few people, Dad's former colleague Richard, our neighbor Mrs. Wilson, and Rebecca's law partner who'd come as her +1, weren't joining in. They watched with expressions of growing discomfort, even disgust. This is wrong, Mrs. Wilson said quietly, but in the silence everyone heard her. What's wrong, Dad replied, is raising a daughter who chooses money over family. That's when Rebecca cleared her throat. Sarah saw her opportunity and took it, collapsing into a chair with perfectly timed sobs. I tried so hard, she wailed. Every business, every opportunity, I just wanted to provide for my babies. She pulled Tyler and Emma onto her lap, though Tyler looked uncomfortable with the display. Mommy's sorry we're going to lose our house, babies. Aunt Diane doesn't think we deserve help. But Aunt Diane, Emma started. Shh, sweetie. Aunt Diane made her choice. Sarah turned to the crowd, mascara strategically smeared but not too messy. You don't understand what it's like. James got laid off through no fault of his own. My boutique failed because of COVID. The food truck was sabotaged by competitors. The jewelry business was funded by a loan from me that you never mentioned to Mom and Dad, Rebecca interrupted. Sarah's mouth snapped shut. And the boutique failed in 2018 before COVID, I added. The food truck never had permits because you never applied for them. The jewelry business sold 12 items, all to family members who felt obligated. You're twisting everything, Sarah cried. James, tell them! But James remained silent, staring at his hands. His brother Marcus moved closer to him, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. Tell them what, Sarah? Marcus asked. About the gambling? About the… Shut up! Sarah shrieked, her victim mask slipping completely. The room stirred. Gambling? That's being handled, Sarah said quickly. It's not relevant. Isn't it? Rebecca asked. James, would you like to share why you really lost your job? James looked up finally, his eyes meeting mine with an expression I'd never seen before. Apology mixed with relief. Don't you dare, Sarah hissed at him. Or what? He asked quietly. You'll take the kids? You'll leave me? You've been threatening that for 2 years while spending every penny I don't have. Mom stood up, confused and angry. What is going on? Sarah? But Sarah had run out of tears, out of manipulations. She just sat there, holding her children like shields while her carefully constructed victim narrative crumbled around her. Before we get to the shocking revelation, I want to ask you something. Have you ever kept evidence of family loans, knowing you might need it someday? Drop a ye in the comments if you have, or que if you think family agreements should just be based on trust. Also, what do you think is in that envelope? Share your guesses below. Now, here's where everything turned around. Before we discuss new financial obligations, should we address the existing ones? Rebecca's voice cut through the chaos with surgical precision. Who the hell are you to interfere? Dad demanded. Rebecca Torres, senior partner at Torres, Blackwood and Associates. She pulled out a business card, placing it on the table. I'm also someone who's watched this family dynamic for 15 years, and frankly, Mr. Mitchell, what I've witnessed tonight could constitute coercion and financial abuse. This is ridiculous. Is it? Rebecca pulled out her phone. I've been recording this entire confrontation. 50 witnesses just heard you threaten to disown your daughter if she doesn't pay a debt that isn't hers. That's textbook financial coercion. Recording without consent is illegal, Mom said triumphantly. Not in a public venue with no reasonable expectation of privacy, Rebecca corrected. This is a hotel ballroom with 50 guests. Everything said here is admissible. The legal terms made several guests shift nervously. This wasn't family drama anymore. It was potentially a legal matter. Now, Rebecca continued, before Diane is thrown out of this family for refusing to enable further financial irresponsibility, shall we discuss the $50,000 Sarah already owes her? That was a business investment, Sarah protested. No, it was a loan. A documented, notarized loan with specific repayment terms. Rebecca looked at my parents. Were you aware your daughter Sarah signed a legal promissory note 5 years ago? The silence was deafening. Of course not, Rebecca continued. Because Sarah told you it was a gift, didn't she? Just like the $20,000 she tried to borrow from me was supposed to be a gift. Just like the $15,000 from your mother's estate that was meant to be split equally somehow all went to Sarah. How do you know about, Mom started. Because unlike your family, I believe in documentation, Rebecca said. And so does Diane. I opened the envelope slowly, pulling out the notarized document. The gold seal caught the light from the chandelier as I unfolded it. This is a promissory note dated March 15th, 2019, I said, my voice steady. Signed by Sarah Mitchell and notarized by Jennifer Huang, licensed notary public of Massachusetts. Sarah lunged forward. That's private! Private? I held it up. You made it public when you accused me of never helping you. Read it, someone called out. Mrs. Wilson, our neighbor. I cleared my throat. Loan agreement between Diane Mitchell, lender, and Sarah Mitchell, borrower. Principal amount, $50,000. Interest rate, 5% annually. Repayment terms, 24 monthly installments beginning June 2019. That's not what we agreed, Sarah stammered. Your signature says otherwise, Rebecca noted. And the notary's seal confirms you signed it willingly, in sound mind, with full understanding of the terms. Dad snatched the paper from my hands, his banking experience kicking in as he scanned it. His face went through several expressions: disbelief, recognition, anger. This is real, he said quietly. Of course it's real, I replied. I learned from the best, didn't I, Dad? You always said to document everything. But Sarah said, Mom trailed off, looking at her younger daughter with new eyes. With 5% annual interest compounded monthly, plus the late payment penalties outlined in Section 3B, Rebecca calculated on her phone, the current amount owed is approximately $67,000. The room erupted. People were talking over each other, some defending Sarah, others expressing shock at the deception. She's charging her own sister interest? Aunt Martha gasped. The same interest rate banks charge, I pointed out. Actually less. Sarah agreed to these terms. She promised to pay it back. She bought a $40,000 car instead. James suddenly spoke up. Show them the rest. Everyone turned to him. What rest? Sarah's voice was dangerous. The other loans. The credit cards in Mom's name. Shut up, James! But the dam had broken. Credit cards in whose name? Dad's voice was deadly quiet. James looked at Sarah, then at his children, and finally at me. I'm sorry, Diane. I should have said something sooner. James, don't. She opened 3 credit cards in your mom's name, James said in a rush. Maxed them out. 28,000 total. Your mom doesn't even know. Mom's face went white. My credit cards? But I only have one. Check your credit report, James advised. Sarah has your social security number. She did it when you were recovering from surgery last year. The room exploded. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was fraud, identity theft, criminal activity. You're lying, Sarah screamed at James. You're just angry because I found out you've been stealing from everyone, including my brother, James shot back. Marcus lent you $5,000 last month. You told me it was for the kids' school, but it went straight to the casino. The gambling revelation landed like a bomb. Everything clicked into place. The failed businesses, the constant need for money, the desperation. Is this true? Dad asked Sarah, his voice broken. Sarah's mask finally shattered completely. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. You always loved Diane more. Perfect Diane with her perfect grades and perfect job. I needed to prove I could succeed too. By stealing? Mom whispered. By committing fraud? By lying to everyone who tried to help you? I added. Rebecca held up her phone. This is all recorded. Sarah, you just admitted to identity theft and fraud in front of 50 witnesses. But that wasn't the only document I had. I pulled out a second sheet from the envelope, a spreadsheet I'd updated just last week. Since we're being transparent, I said, here's the full accounting. 15 loans over 10 years, totaling $103,000, not including the fraudulent credit cards Mom apparently doesn't know about. I read from the list. June 2014, $5,000 for emergency medical bills, used for vacation to Cancun. I have the Instagram posts. December 2015, $8,000 for car repairs. Bought a Louis Vuitton bag and jewelry. Credit card statements confirm. March 2016, $12,000 for the boutique. Never paid rent. Shop closed in 6 months. September 2017, $3,000 for kids' school. Public school is free. Money went to casino. Stop, Sarah begged. But I continued, listing every loan, every lie, every broken promise. The room was silent except for my voice and Mom's quiet crying. Total from me, $50,000. From Mom and Dad, $38,000. From Grandma's estate, $15,000. From various relatives, approximately $20,000. From Rebecca, declined, thankfully. Uncle Tony looked sick. I gave her $5,000 last year. For Tyler's medical procedure, I confirmed. Tyler never had surgery. The money was for, Sarah started. The casino, James finished. It's always for the casino. She's lost everything we've ever had and everything everyone's ever given us. Marcus nodded. She asked me for money monthly. I finally said no. That's when she started with Mom's credit cards. Would you like me to continue with the full list? I asked the room. Given the documented loan and Sarah's admission of fraud, Rebecca announced, Diane would be within her rights to pursue both civil and criminal action. You wouldn't, Mom gasped. She's your sister. The sister who just disowned me? I asked. The sister who's stolen from you? I turned to Sarah. You have 90 days to repay the documented loan, $67,000. If you can't pay it all, we can arrange a payment plan through Rebecca's office, but this time it will be enforced. I can't. Then sell the Highlander. That's $40,000 right there. Get jobs, both of you. Stop gambling. Get help. And if she doesn't pay? Dad asked, his voice hollow. Then I pursue legal remedies, I said simply. Just like you would with any other defaulted loan, Dad. You taught me that. Rebecca added, the identity theft is a separate matter. Mrs. Mitchell, you need to freeze your credit immediately and file a police report. I can't report my own daughter, Mom protested. Then you're enabling a criminal, Rebecca said bluntly, and you'll be liable for those debts. Several guests were openly recording now. Tomorrow, this would be everywhere, but for once, the truth would be told. I'll also need written confirmation that I'm no longer considered family, I told my parents. If I'm disowned, I want it official. That way, there's no confusion about future financial expectations. Dad looked at me like he'd never seen me before. You want us to put it in writing? You're a banker, I said. You know the importance of documentation. Unless you're reconsidering your position. The ball was in their court now. I stood up, gathering my purse and the documents. The room remained frozen, 50 people unsure whether to applaud or condemn. Thank you all for witnessing this, I said calmly. It's important to have accountability in families, don't you think? Mrs. Wilson started clapping, slowly, deliberately. Richard, Dad's former colleague, joined her, then Marcus, then 3 others. Not a standing ovation, but an acknowledgement that truth had finally been spoken. Where are you going? Mom asked, her voice small. Away from here. You made it clear I'm no longer family. I'm simply honoring your wishes. Diane, wait, Dad started. I'll give you 90 days to repay the documented loan, I repeated to Sarah. My attorney will be in touch. Rebecca stood with me, professional and composed. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, I suggest you consult with an attorney regarding the identity theft. And Sarah, I recommend you seek help for gambling addiction. There are resources available. As we walked toward the exit, Tyler broke free from Sarah's grip and ran to me. Aunt Diane, I'm sorry Mom lied. I hugged him quickly. It's not your fault, sweetheart. Take care of your sister. Will we see you again? I looked at my parents, at Sarah, at the wreckage of what had been my family. That's up to your parents. Then Rebecca and I walked out of the Marriott ballroom, leaving behind 50 shocked guests, a ruined birthday party, and a family that had chosen greed over truth. The last thing I heard was James saying, I want a divorce. The party ended within 15 minutes of my departure. Rebecca told me later she'd left her law partner behind to observe and report. By the time we reached the parking garage, my phone was exploding. 17 missed calls from Mom, 12 from Dad, 23 texts from various relatives. I turned it off. You okay? Rebecca asked as we sat in her car. I will be, I said, surprised to find it was true. She showed me her phone. The recording was perfect, clear audio of every threat, every admission, every revelation. This is insurance, she said, in case they try to spin it differently. They did try, of course. By the next morning, Sarah had posted on Facebook about her heartless sister who chose money over family, but she hadn't counted on the witnesses. Mrs. Wilson commented first. I was there. That's not what happened. Then Richard. As someone who worked with Robert for 20 years, I'm appalled by what I witnessed. Diane showed remarkable restraint. Then Marcus, with the killing blow. My sister-in-law is a gambling addict who stole from multiple family members. My brother is filing for divorce. Stop lying, Sarah. The post was deleted within an hour. Uncle Tony called me that afternoon. I'm sorry, he said simply. I didn't know about the loans, about any of it. Martha and I were on your side. 3 cousins reached out with similar messages. Even Dad's sister, my Aunt Patricia, who lived in Florida, called to say she was disgusted with my parents' behavior. Robert called me, she said. Wanted me to talk sense into you. I told him the only sensible thing you did was document everything. But the real shock came from James. He texted me that evening. Thank you for finally exposing the truth. I've been trapped in this lie for years. Marcus is helping me file for divorce and get custody. Would you consider being a character witness? Absolutely, I replied. The family was dividing, choosing sides. But for the first time, the truth was on the table. 3 months later, the landscape had completely changed. Sarah sold the Highlander for $38,000, less than she'd paid, but enough to make a significant dent in what she owed me. The rest came from Mom and Dad, who had to take out a home equity loan to cover both my loan and the fraudulent credit cards. They paid me $40,000 total, not the full amount, but Rebecca advised me to accept it and write off the rest. You've made your point, she said. Don't let this consume you. James's divorce was finalized in record time. Sarah didn't contest it. She couldn't, not with the evidence of gambling addiction and fraud. James got primary custody, with Sarah having supervised visitation until she completed a gambling addiction program. He sent me a thank you card with a picture of Tyler and Emma at their new apartment, looking happier than I'd seen them in years. Mom and Dad aged 5 years in those 3 months. The home equity loan meant they couldn't retire when planned. Dad had to keep working, and the golden retirement party he'd imagined would never happen. They'd also discovered Sarah had been siphoning money from their retirement account, small amounts they hadn't noticed, but totaling nearly $12,000 over 2 years. The extended family remained split. About half understood why I'd done what I did. The other half thought I should have just paid and kept the peace. But even those who disagreed admitted Sarah had gone too far with the fraud. Sarah herself entered rehab for gambling addiction after the court mandated it as part of her plea deal for the identity theft charges. Mom refused to press charges, but the credit card companies did it for her. Sarah got probation and mandatory counseling. 6 months after the birthday party, I got a letter from Sarah. Not an apology, she wasn't there yet, but an acknowledgement. "I'm sick," she wrote. "I've been sick for a long time. I'm getting help." It was a start. I bought my condo 4 months after the party, not the one I'd originally wanted, that dream had been adjusted, but a nice 1-bedroom with an office nook and a balcony overlooking a park. The first night there, I sat on my second-hand couch in my very own living room and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. The boundaries I'd set that night weren't just about money. They were about self-respect, about refusing to be the family scapegoat, about breaking a cycle that would have continued forever if I hadn't stood up. I learned that family isn't about blood, it's about respect. It's about people who see your worth beyond your bank account. It's about relationships built on honesty, not manipulation. Rebecca, who'd stood by me when 50 people turned against me, that's family. James, who finally told the truth despite the cost, that's family. Even Mrs. Wilson, our neighbor who clapped when everyone else sat silent, that's family. My parents and I don't speak. They sent a Christmas card with a generic signature, no personal message. I didn't respond. Sarah and I have no contact except through lawyers about the remaining debt, which she's slowly paying off through her job at a call center, her first real job in 10 years. But I see Tyler and Emma regularly. James brings them over for dinner twice a month. Tyler's interested in accounting now, says he wants to be like me. I'm teaching him about budgets and compound interest. Emma draws pictures of us together, Aunt Diane and her, always smiling. That's the family I choose, the one built on truth, respect, and genuine love, the one where boundaries aren't walls but bridges to healthier relationships. That's my story. 6 months later, I still sometimes wake up wondering if I did the right thing. Then I remember the years of manipulation, the lies, the theft, and I know I did. Setting boundaries with family is never easy. They know exactly which buttons to push because they installed them. They weaponize love, obligation, and guilt because those are the tools that have always worked. But here's what I learned. Saying no to financial abuse isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. If you're in a similar situation, document everything. Every loan, every promise, every threat. Not because you're vindictive, but because truth needs evidence when you're up against years of gaslighting. And remember, family who truly love you won't threaten to disown you for having boundaries. They won't demand you sacrifice your future for their mistakes. They won't manipulate 50 people into pressuring you to comply. What boundaries have you had to set with family? Have you ever been the family ATM, expected to bail everyone out while being called selfish for having limits? Drop a comment below. I read every single one, and this community has become part of my chosen family too. If this story resonated with you, please share it. Someone in your life might need to hear that it's okay to say no, even to family, especially to family. And to my parents, if you're watching this, the door isn't closed, but it won't open again without respect, accountability, and genuine change. The same things you taught me to value once upon a time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding. And remember, family isn't about blood, it's about respect. Until next time, stay strong. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps others find these important conversations about family boundaries. What's the hardest boundary you've ever had to set with family? Share in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories about standing up for yourself with grace and dignity, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-respect. Until next time, stay strong.